Alright guys, what is up? It is me, David Computes, and today we're back with another video. So guys, this is my Asus Eee PC 1000HE, okay? It was a $250 netbook released in the grand year of 2009, okay? Now, it is pretty cool. So let's go ahead and go over some features. First off, it is extremely tiny. Like, holy crap, let me go ahead and grab out my Pavilion G6 here. Alright, so guys, this is my G56 here. My G56 was just easier to get because my Pavilion G6 was bit buried, but yeah, so this is the G56 and this is the Eee PC. As you can see here, the Eee PC is about close to one half the size, almost exactly one half the size of the G56, okay? Let's go and talk about the screen and the trackpad and the keyboard. So the screen is a 1024 by 600 TFT screen, which honestly for that resolution for this small screen, it's like barely a 10-inch screen, considering you're supposed to be viewing it from a laptop distance. It's actually not that bad, you know? Unlike a phone where you have to, like hold it up, which actually I'm using a phone to record this right now. But yeah, on this keyboard, it's pretty decent actually. It's shockingly decent. It's much better than most Chromebook keyboards. Like, look. It's not too rattly. It's pretty, I think it's a chiclet type keyboard, but I'm not sure. But look here, it's pretty decent feeling, all right? And it's a bit small and cramped, so I do make a few typos. But yeah, it's fine. And this trackpad is actually really good. It supports multi-touch gestures and has these little stylish buttons, okay? They have solid click feel. Not only that, but the software support for this trackpad is insane, okay? Like, for example, you can make it so where if you press them at the same time, it does a middle click. Very awesome. Love to see that. But yeah, so yeah, this thing is this is actually from what people would say the last hurrah of netbooks, because this was before the Windows 7 days. Okay, this was when this was one of the last set of netbooks that came with Windows XP pre-installed. Okay, or some weird version of Linux. Most of them came with XP though. So yeah. This was one of the last ones that came with XP, and XP was actually really optimized, even with bloatware, it didn't even take up as much memory and CPU as stock Windows 7. So yeah, Windows XP worked pretty well in this thing, okay, considering that this thing was about as powerful as a low-end Pentium 4, and XP was designed for low-end Pentium 4s and Pentium 3s and maybe even Pentium 2s. But so yeah, this thing was one of the last good Eee PCs, okay? Next one after this they would have come with Windows 7 Basic, which that sucked. You couldn't even change the background. Like, holy crap, that would have been painful to use the same background without, doing registry stuff. But yeah. So yeah, let's go ahead and get on with the specs of this thing, shall we? Alright, so this 16-year-old Asus Eee PC 1000HE is packing 2 GB of DDR2 533 MHz single channel RAM. It's single channel, so it is pretty bad. On the CPU side, however, it's an Intel Atom N280, which is at 1.66 GHz with 1 cores and hyperthreading. So it's better than the N270, but still horrible. And the SSD is a 256 gig SATA 3 SSD, which I replaced. Originally came with a 160 gig hard drive, which nuh-uh. And the GPU is an Intel GMA 950 graphics, okay? It's also got no boost for the CPU frequency, so it's at 1.66 GHz, no more. And the temperature sensor is completely off, saying that the CPU temperature is at freezing levels, so yeah. Anyways, on with the video. Alright, so yeah, guys, let's go ahead and turn this on. I have, so guys, this is a funny story, actually. This Atom N280 is actually the older brother, and it's slightly faster, about 20% faster than the Intel Atom N270, in which, this was, like the slightly higher end version. It came with 60 more megahertz and a bit more cache. So yeah, let's go and wait for this thing to gloriously boot up. And yeah, it's pretty awesome, So I've got an updated version of Windows XP Service Pack 3. If I go ahead and log in here, gotta wait for this thing to load. It's actually pretty quick. Oh yeah, that's awesome. Alright, but if I go ahead and open up the start menu here, and I go ahead and show all programs, so you can see here I got Legacy Update working, and that's awesome because that means that this now has proper certificates and has some decent well, not really great, but, you know, it's still, you know, fixes some of the Windows XP virus things where, you know, if you turn off the firewall, your computer gets infected within seconds. But yeah, that's a complete myth. As long as you keep the firewall on, even for like Windows XP Service Pack 1 with no updates or no Service Pack at all, as long as you keep the firewall on, it, you know, it doesn't get infected. So yeah. All right, so now that we've talked about how, you know, this is updated, actually the last security update for XP was, you might think it might be 2014, but no. Actually, it was 2019 because it fixed, you know, some of the major security problems. Like, for example, whatever the thing was called, I think it's called like a blue flag error. But basically, it allowed basically other PC on the internet to interact with XP very easily without the firewall being turned on. You know. So let's go ahead and have a few. I have a few test sites. We're gonna go ahead and first start off and see how long it takes to load in Twitter. Okay. So let's go and start the timer now. I don't have a timer, so we're just gonna skip fast forward. Alright, so it has loaded. I'm on the login screen, fortunately, because I don't have a Twitter account. Shockingly, I don't use Twitter, but looking at the recording times, I clicked on the X icon at approximately 5 minutes in the recording, and well, you know, it's obviously going to be different since, you know, I probably cut some things out, but yeah. And it fully loaded in about 5:30, so it took about 30 seconds to load. That's pretty okay. You know, I mean, it's not great, obviously, but yeah, you know, in a pinch, it'll do. Okay, like, it'll work in a pinch. Alright, but let's go ahead and see how well this thing handles YouTube, okay? So let's go and open up Muya's AK video. Again, shout out to him. He is a great guy, and he makes awesome content, okay? And I especially like that one video where he does AK BeamNG Drive gameplay, because I know my PC would never be able to handle. Actually, you know what? It probably could maybe do a bit of AK because it's a 5070, but you have to play some older games. So yeah, but yeah, thanks to Muya again. Yeah, he's really awesome guy and has an awesome channel. Alright, so let's go ahead and head over to his AK video. Alright, so we are currently in Muya's AK video. Let's go and play it. Come on. Alright, but look here. Yeah, as you can see here, it takes a bit of time to warm up, and I think this menu is slowing it down a bit, but as you can see here, it's handling 360p playback pretty well. Now, obviously, this little menu is kind of lagging it, so let's go ahead and close it here. So yeah, unfortunately, the captions don't really work that well, but also 360p for this small screen is usable. Not great, but usable in a pinch, you know. I'm starting to get, you know, the feeling that this laptop creates. You know, it's usable in a pinch if you really need to use it that badly. Specifically this laptop. Let's go and talk more about the Futures laptop. First off, I don't know how much this thing weighs. You can do the research on your own, just Google search it. But look here, this thing, let's go and see how thick it is, okay? So as you can see here, it is actually relatively thin, you know. Let me just go and shut here. But as you can see here, it's actually thinnish. It gives you the feeling that it's thin, but it's not really that thin. But yeah, if I go and look at it from the front, for example, yeah, it looks thin. Also, I put this tough gaming sticker on it, but I mean, it is Asus. So, it could be tough gaming if, you know, instead of calling it the Eee PC, they called it the tough PC. But, yeah, honestly, they should come up with a tough PC. That's a pretty sick name. But look here. Yeah, let's go ahead and see how well this thing performs, okay, in the benchmarks. Starting off with Quake 3 here, we are achieving a solid average of 58 FPS, which is pretty decent, with 1% lows down to 49. The game is running pretty decent, and also looks decent since it's running at 800 by 600 high settings. 800 by 600 may sound like a low resolution, that's because it is, but for a small screen like this, it is definitely acceptable. Besides, we can't even turn it up, because the screen's native resolution is 1024 by 600, not 1024 by 768, which is the next step up. So Quake 3 here is a solid pass for this netbook. Next up, we have Doom 3 here running at 640 by 480 ultra settings. Because for the life of me, I cannot change the settings. It's just stuck at ultra. It is extremely annoying. At least it's running better than the Inspiron 1100 with averages of 12 and 1% lows of 2 compared to averages of 2 and 1% lows of 1. Open areas will make the frame rate drop, due to not enough VRAM or GPU horsepower, but is playable in smaller closed-in areas. Like for example, in the introduction area, yeah, I think it runs pretty decently there. And yeah, overall, it's a fail still, but you know, it could have run better if we can change the settings, just like the Inspiron 1100. So yeah, it's unfortunately a fail. Alright, next up we have Minecraft 1.6, as the GMA 950 piece of crap does not support OpenGL 2.1, which is required for version 1.8 and later on. 1.7 doesn't really work with OpenGL 1.3, unfortunately, so it cannot run any of the newer versions. At least the world did generate though, which is significantly better than the Inspiron 1100. Man, we had to use a super flat world. At minimum settings and with Optifine, with the native window res, as Fraps doesn't really like full screen Minecraft for some reason. I don't know why, it just doesn't show the frame rate. We're getting a cinematic average of 18 FPS and 1% lows of 3. The game stutters when generating new chunks, but when mining or exploring old generated chunks, the game is definitely playable. Minecraft is barely a pass in my book. Alright, last up, we have the original Half-Life 1, and the game is definitely playable. The game is running at 800 by 600 direct 3D mode, which basically means that it's using the GPU to render it, and the game is achieving a solid average of 62 frames per second with 1% lows of 45, which is very playable. The game looks decent and runs decent as well. Half-Life 1 has no difficulty running on this netbook at all, and it runs perfectly fine. A solid pass. So overall, how do I feel about this netbook? Well, it can play retro games, so for a tiny retro machine, it is definitely good. And it can also emulate some NES and SNES games, okay? But for browsing the web, it's bearable. And for watching YouTube videos, it's also bearable. Like, it's not great, and I wouldn't recommend it. Like, anything else is better. A phone is better at this point, but, you know, it's there, you know. It can work, eventually. But yeah, anyways guys, see you in the next video, okay? This netbook is pretty awesome, and I like it because, you know, personally I'm a fan of either A, very big laptops, or B, very small laptops like this one. So yeah guys, anyways, see you in the next video, okay? Subscribe!